All right, hey guys, welcome to our real estate video today. My name is Gary Cassady, and I've got a special guest today, Larry Harbolt from Florida. Hi, Larry, how are you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Wonderful. Up here in Ohio, 40 degrees. You're what, 80 degrees now?
We're in the 70s. Yeah, I'm St. Pete Beach, Florida, west of Tampa, and it's in the 70s, bright sunshine. It's really miserable, you know.
Yeah, you're laying out by the pool today, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Suffering every day.
Suffering every day. So
Yeah.
hey, Larry, one of the questions I'd like to start off with is when I interview everybody, someone new in the real estate world, is how did you get started in the real estate, and why did you get started in the real estate?
Well, you know, I grew up in Michigan. I grew up on a dairy farm, and I always knew the real estate was a good thing to have because of the farm. But in my late teens, we stopped doing the dairy farm, and I went to work as a union pipe fitter. Well, at that time, shortly after, I had some children, and being in Michigan, cold winters, couldn't work on unemployment. I had to do something to bring in some money, and I knew real estate was something I could do. I just didn't know how. And one night after watching a Monday night football game, my wife and I usually turned out the lights and went to bed because I had to go to work the next day. Mm-hmm. But that night, for some reason, we didn't turn off the TV. And after the game, this guy come on, and he was talking about he was going to be in Kalamazoo the very next day. And he was going to tell everybody how they could buy real estate with no money and no credit. Well, that fit right into my program because, number one, I didn't have 10 cents in my pocket. Yeah. And my credit stunk, as you can imagine, with all those kids to feed. But I wanted to get started. And that was back, I got my first property in 1979. So having done that, I wanted to do more properties. And that was in the days when interest rates were 18 to 22%. And I didn't want to do that because I knew I couldn't qualify for any type of institutional financing. Mm-hmm. So I knew if I was going to buy any real estate, I had to pay the seller. I had to be creative. I had to do something other than qualify for a loan because I knew I couldn't. Yeah. So I went to see the guy the next day. I took off from work, which I couldn't really afford. Yeah. But I went, and the guy was talking about how to do real estate with no money and no credit. Well, he was selling a real estate course, and it was $495. I didn't have $49, let alone $495. So I didn't buy the course, but on the way home, my wife and I stopped at a bookstore, and I bought a book he had written for $22. That I found the money for. Well, that got me started. And what I had done was, after that, I was referred to some of the local banks. Now, I come from a town of 800 people, and all of the surrounding towns were smaller. Mm-hmm. So I would go to the banks, and I would see if they had any properties they had taken back in foreclosure that they had on their books. And what happened was they would sell me those houses on 10% land contracts. Now, a land contract is where you pay them every month until it's paid off. You don't get a bank loan, even though these were banks. They would let me buy on the land contract. Now, I didn't have money to fix the properties either. So they would escrow the money needed to repair the property. And when I would bring in receipts and pictures, they would release the money as I fixed the properties so that I could pay the contractors. Now, I was a licensed contractor at the time, a licensed builder. Mm-hmm. But that was how I got started because there was no other way. But I learned the best way for me to buy property because of my financial situation was to buy directly from the seller, because anything through the multiple listing service wouldn't work. And as time has gone on, to this day, 40 years later, with the crisis that everyone's facing in this country, today is the perfect time for what I learned back in those days. And that's what I teach today to all of my students, because this is the critical time. If you can learn what I teach, you're going to have a heads up on all the other people in your marketplace, because you're going to know things and how to do things that they don't know how to do.
Well, that's pretty great. A bank would actually loan to you on a land contract. That's pretty impressive.
Well, it was a way for me to get started. What I didn't realize at the time was the banks had all of those properties on their books. They were non-performing assets. By me just signing the land contract before I ever made a payment, I was converting those from non-performing assets to a performing asset, which got them off the bank's books. And that was critical. So they helped me, I helped them. It was a really great thing to do. But eventually that market dried up. So then I had to learn how to market directly to the seller and negotiate with the seller and buy from the seller and pay the seller every month.
Okay. So, I mean, you're obviously known for being the creative finance guy. You've been teaching for a long time, and I've been hearing a lot of rumors right now, Larry, about banks not wanting to loan on properties where they're straightening up their criteria on what they'll loan out, especially for rehab properties.
Right.
And there's a big thing with hard money lenders right now. They're wanting, they're kind of being selective on what they're picking and lowering the loan to value that they're willing to loan on. What's kind of your thoughts on that, Larry? Like, you don't, because you don't really use banks at all, correct?
No, I don't. No, I don't. To this day, I see no reason, knowing what I know, to ever go to a bank. I don't need to go to banks, because you see, the deals that I put together are between the seller and myself. Banks don't enter into it. It's whatever the seller and I can agree to is what we can do. And I don't have to meet any of the bank's qualifications, because it's between the seller and I. So that right there in and of itself is a tremendous bonus, because I'm not looking at the same properties everyone else is looking at. I'm finding properties others don't know are for sale. And it's not that hard to do. But the fact is, everybody that only looks in the multiple listing service, I refer to it as everyone is fishing in the same mud puddle. Everyone's looking at the same deals. I'm finding deals nobody else knows are for sale. Those are the ones I sit down with a seller and negotiate with them to find out exactly what they're willing to do. Price or terms. I can give them their price if they'll give me my terms that will allow me to make a profit. It's that simple. And once you know how to do that, you've got to market all into yourself that no one else is your competition.
Yeah, exactly. So, I've known you for a few years now, and, you've always impressed me, where you've I just don't use banks. And so that's pretty impressive to me. So,
well, at one time I couldn't, and today, why would I? I can do a better deal without the bank.
Yep. Yeah. I love going, I use a lot of private money, as you know, and I don't use a bank at all myself. I've never used a bank to finance any of my deals. It's always been either private money or creative. And, I'm learning your system, and it's helped me tremendously get more and more deals. So, because I've learned your system a little bit, and it's helping me tremendously, I've asked you to kind of do a creative financing training. And I'm kind of twisting your arm a little bit to get you to do it. Help everybody. That's true. So, and there's no charge for the training, so we're going to do a free training for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, and can you tell us about kind of the stuff that you train on and things of that nature? Can you tell us a little bit about that, like what we're going to do in our training?
Well, basically, if you're going to be an investor, like all of the seasoned and really successful investors that I know, there are 6 steps, and you've got to follow through on all 6 steps. It's not that hard to do, but number 1, you got to find deals other people don't know about. That's the first step. The second step is you got to know how to figure repair costs. And you do that by having contractors tell you what those costs are going to be. But that's an important part of the puzzle. The third thing is you got to run the numbers on the property. That is the critical part. You
Yes,
can't just throw a number at a seller and think you're going to make money. You have to know all the details of every property you look at. I show you exactly how to do that. After you figure the numbers, then you sit down with the seller and you try and work out a deal of what they're willing to accept. So that's not the hard part. Just understanding you have the ability to do that is the only mountain that most people have. And one of the things I do is I teach in my seminars, I teach a negotiating portion of the training where we sit down, people role play, and I give them the questions, I give them answers, and I've got a sheet of paper on both sides of things to tell sellers when they object to anything you say. And when you've got that, there's no deal you can't do as long as you stay with it and try. See, the problem I have with people that deal with lenders, they throw a cash offer at a property. In other words, let's just use round numbers. Seller wants $150,000 for the property. Well, most people, they've gone to a seminar and they know they don't want to pay 150, so they say, well, we'll offer you 120,000.
Okay.
The seller says no. So what do most people do? They raise the price a little bit. Well, if they represent that offer and the seller says no a second time, most people go away. They drop that property and they don't pursue it. But see, that is a bad way of doing it. The way I teach, there's multiple ways to make offers on property. Now, at my training, I teach over 20 different ways to make an offer on a property. So how can you go wrong? As long as you know what those 20 are and you've got a script, you know, that's the easy part. So making the offers, and I believe in making multiple offers. I talk about doing that. In other words, you pre-script several different ways that you can make an offer on a property before you talk to the seller, so that if they say no to one of those techniques, you've got another one to present. If they say no to that, you've got another one. And what that does, they may not accept any of those, but it will start a conversation that will lead to a deal. And that's the critical part. You've got to get to the part where you can put the deal together.
Yeah, I agree. That's awesome that you're given so many different options as well on how to actually construct a deal. What's the most creative deal that you put together that you can think of at the moment?
Oh, I've done a lot of deals. I've been involved in over 400 deals. And some of them have been pretty creative. I bought a home on the Gulf of Mexico where I'm paying half of what the property is worth, and the seller loves it. And it was just the way I negotiated the deal is how I got the deal. And I explained that in my training in detail. Actually, when people come to my trainings, we spend one whole day going through different deals that have been done, what the seller wanted, what was offered, and what we ended up paying for the property. And what that does, that takes people from being, you know, either a one-trick pony, only knowing one way to do it, make an offer. Or, you know, well, actually, the people today are trained three ways: all cash, lease option, or subject to. That's all people know. Well, that's three. I can show you a lot more ways that might get the seller to accept your offer if they say no to those three. So you want to be well armed. It's not difficult when you have the script in front of you to do that. And I've spent years putting those scripts together because that is what I've done. And now I'm teaching it. And I've got students that are hitting the ball out of the park, I'm telling you.
Yeah, I mean, I run across a lot of your students. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say that the most creative was probably, that one comes to mind. There's several others I can talk about at another time because I'm really not bringing any to mind, but that one probably is the best because that one is, you know, when you can buy a house on the water and pay only half of what it's worth because of the way you structure the deal.
Yeah.
Now I'm paying full price for it, but the payment is what I'm paying half of. And the seller's tickled to death. So it's how you structure your deals. I'll go into detail on that at another time.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe at the training that you're talking about me doing.
All right. Well, that kind of brings us to another point here, and Larry's been gracious enough. We put a free training together for you guys, and down here below, you should see a link to a webinar to register for the webinar. We're going to be running that this coming week or next week when we get everything finalized on the training. So go ahead and click down there and go ahead and get registered for the event. And Larry, we really appreciate you being on the real estate show today. And we look forward to learning more from you. You got any words of wisdom before we go, Larry?
Yes. One of the things I want everybody to understand, if you're going to be a successful real estate investor, like the masters that taught me, there's one thing you have to understand about making offers, because you're never going to buy property if you don't make an offer. You're never going to buy a property if you don't make an offer that the seller will accept. One of the things I teach is something all of the really successful investors, the people that do this every day, not the traveling gurus. I'm not talking about the people that know one way to do a deal. I'm talking about people that are multifaceted. One thing you need to learn, every offer you make has 4 parts. There's the price, the payback period, the interest rate, and the payment. Every deal has those 4 components. And the one thing you've got to learn is all 4 of those are adjustable. You see, when you deal with a bank, they tell you how much you're going to pay because it's going to be based on an appraisal. They're going to tell you the interest rate. They're going to tell you how many months it's going to take to pay them back. And they're going to tell you what the payment is. You have nothing to say about it. When you deal with a seller, all of those pieces are adjustable. And that's one of the things that if I can teach you how to do that, I'm telling you, you're unstoppable because there's no deal you can't put together. So that's the one thing I want you to learn. Every offer has 4 parts: price, length of payback period, interest rate, and payment. If you understand they're all adjustable and you know how to adjust them, and it's very simple, you can be a success. Real estate investor, you can knock the ball out of the park because you can do things none of your competition can do.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, those are great points. So, guys, you need to get registered for this event coming up, for this webinar, for this training. And Larry's been gracious enough to offer his time to put a training together for you guys. So, click the link below, and we will get you registered, and it'll have the times on the event as well. So it'll be sometime probably the next 7 days. And guys, again, we appreciate it. Larry, we appreciate you very much. Enjoy the warm weather.
I will struggle and suffer through it. Yes.
Yes. Out by the pool, the beach. So,
yes.
All right, Larry, we really appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thank you for having me.